Welcome. Scott here. Here is a quick boss guide for the upcoming story chapter, Act 4 Chapter 1 Part 1 for a flowering future overview. The event synergy units are Aerith, Alisaie, Ignis, Zack, Zell and Aphmau. Both Aerith and Zack will be getting their rework and FR boards. Aerith Burst will be making its debut and Zack will getting his FR. We will be fighting the Hell House, which has 170 million HP on its first form. When its HP drop to below 20%, it will transform to its second form, which has 165 million HP. The turn requirement is 55. The HP requirements is 5000. Before I continue further, here is a small disclaimer clause for the video. The guide is written based on the time that the event was released for the Japanese version. Please do note that it is possible that the boss fight mechanics might differ when the actual event is released in global. Like most other Shinryu fights, the boss gains increased brave damage and gain resistances at start of the fight and 79% HP threshold. Bringing a support like Lunaattack, Charlotta, Aerith, Ramza, Yuna, Iroha, Pernello, Garnet, Selfa that grants damage boosting aura will make your fight easier. As the boss gains substantial boost to their defenses with the auras, it is important to inflict debuffs that lower their defenses. On the screen I have listed down the key utility that you can consider when forming your party for this fight. To date, this is one of the toughest fights in Shinryu era unless you have brought the key units. The event also featured the Shinryu co-op. The fight also introduces HP gate mechanics, which will nerf your force time damage until you disable the gate mechanics. Timing on when to use your FR Echo and having the utility to handle is vital to the success of clearing the fight. Firstly, let me give a quick overview of the fight. The boss will do more follow-up attacks when the force gauge build up, and the force gauge will charge up faster when your party act. The follow-up attacks are guaranteed hit and its basic attacks will grant 4 framed buffs. It will transform to second form when its HP drop below 19% with a gravity AoE HP attack that reduces your party to 30% of their current HP. This attack can be mitigated with damage mitigation. The force gauge will not reset. The threshold attack can be triggered even while in summon or burst phase. While it is in its form, you have facing threshold mechanics at the 69%, 59%, 49%, 39%, and 19% HP threshold. At the 69% and 39% HP threshold, the boss will use Hell Press, which inflicts HP damage that reduces your party HP by 50%. It will also grant the boss the durability buff, which reduces brave damage by 100% and HP damage by 999%. You need to dispel buff or you can't pass the gate. This attack will trigger even during your unit's burst or summon phase. At the 59% and 49% HP threshold, the boss will trigger Lunaattack and followed up its additional attacks depending on the boss' current force gauge status. This threshold attack will not trigger during summon or burst phase but trigger once you exit the burst or summon phase. For example, if you lower the boss HP from 69% to 29% in your summon phase, you will face back-to-back Lunaattack and its follow-up attacks once you ended the summon phase. At the 19% HP threshold, the boss will do another Suicide Drop Plus, which will reduce your party HP to 30% of their current HP. Similar to its Hell Press threshold attack, the boss can also use this while in your burst or summon phase. Does the fight sounds daunting? Let's cover on the components and utility that you need for the fight. As the fight has lots of threshold attacks, it is advisable to bring party-wide damage mitigation. Zack and Aerith offer that with their BT auras, while you can negate it with LDCA like Warrior Light or Beatrix's Holy Knight Safeguard. Examples of damage mitigation units are Warrior of Light, Bash, Core, Ruby Conte, Aerith, Beatrix, Zack, and Kurasame. As the boss has fast force gauge charging mechanics, it is most likely that you will see the boss uses its force ability before yours. The force ability can inflict a framed debuff which has HP poison. So you want protection against the debuffs by bring debuff evasion unit or cleansers. For debuff evasion unit, you can consider Aerith, Selpha, Aphmau, Ignis, and Lena. Do note that Aerith needs to apply her Seal Evil debuff on the boss to negate that. For examples of units that offer debuff cleansing utility, you can consider Yuna, Pernello, Mog or Sid Reigns. The upcoming units that release in the subsequent weeks, Pain and Bald here are also good units with debuff cleansing utility. You will face a HP gate when fight the boss second form in the form of durability buff, which the boss grant itself upon using Hell Press. There are two ways to handle this, either prevent the boss from buffing itself with buff negation or dispel the buff when the boss applies. For units with buff negation utility, you can consider using Aerith, Ashe, and Vincent. For units with dispelling utility, you can consider Sid Reigns, Seymour, Beatrix, or Ferris. As we are going nuke past the HP gates, FR Echo is highly recommended for this fight. It will make your job easier with a party of 3 FR Echo units. I have listed them down on the screen for your reference. Non-attacking instant FR like Aerith offers a tremendous HP damage boost during your force time. If the fight is still too difficult for your current roster, you can also consider pulling for Quina, whose BT aura can bypass these HP gates without any difficulty. As we are no longer have Lufania Plus fights, the boss guide will be focused primarily on Shinryu fights. In Shinryu, you need to understand the effects gained by the boss as the force gauge build up, its force ability and its force time effect. If you don't bring any force chargers, it is highly certain that the boss force gauge will build up faster than yours. To have a better understanding on the basics of the force gauge mechanics and Shinryu fights, I have done a video explaining the mechanics. I have included the link to the video under the comments and video description for your quick reference. Throughout the fight, the boss has a permanent force gauge properties that raises the charging rate of its force ability by 4%. When the force gauge is between 20% to 69%, the boss will gain a follow-up attack. In its first form, when it uses Hell Bomber, it will follow up the attack with Hell Bomber Plus. In its second form, when it uses Lunaattack, it will follow up the attack with Lunaattack Plus. When the force gauge is at 40% or higher, the boss will become immune to delay and turn deletion. Its CTB gauge will be framed. When the force gauge is between 70% to 100%, the boss will gain an additional follow-up attack. In its first form, when it uses Hell Bomber, it will follow up with Hell Bomber Plus and Hell Bomber Plus Plus. In its second form, when it uses Lunaattack, it will follow up with Lunaattack Plus and Lunaattack Plus Plus. When the force gauge is at 80% or higher, the boss raises its Brave and HP damage by 100%. The boss force gauge will build up faster as its HP is lowered. You can refer to the table on the screen for the percentages. At the 100% threshold, the boss will use Hell Bomber Plus 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 while it is in first form and Lunaattack Plus 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 while it is in second form. The force ability is a reset break status, followed by a guaranteed hit AoE Brave plus HP attack executed twice. The boss will grant itself 10 turn gunpowder and inflicts a framed debuff called Heavy Pressure for 10 turns. The gunpowder framed buff will raises the boss attack and defense by 100% along with 20% turn rate increase. The heavy pressure framed debuff will inflict Brave Poison, a HP poison that scales off 30% of boss attack stats and lowers the inflicted character's turn rate by 20%. Upon using the force ability, the boss will enter into its force time where the gauge will start to emit a red hue with a counter of 20 on its gauge. When the force time is activated, the boss will gain the following enhancements. The boss will deal Brave Cap damage or Rainbow Brave with its Brave attacks. The boss also gain damage resistance to non-FR HP damage by 300%. To deal force weakness on the boss which cancel the boss force time, you need to fulfill one of the following conditions. The first condition is to use a melee FR ability that grants buff. Currently in Global, only Zack's FR meet this condition. The second condition is to use an instant turn non-attacking FR ability. Only Aerith, Minwoo, and Pernello meet the condition. Now let's go through the key mechanics of the fight. The fight is divided generally in two phases. Let's go through the first phase. In this phase, the boss will use Hellbomber whenever it gets its turn to act. Hellbomber is a single target brave attack and grants the boss 4 framed buffs that raises attack, speed, brave damage, and defense by 50% for 5 turns. When the boss force gauge is between 20% to 69%, the boss will follow Hellbomber with Hellbomber Plus. Hellbomber Plus is a guaranteed hit single target brave plus HP attack. When the boss force gauge is 70% and above, the boss will follow Hellbomber with Hellbomber Plus and Hellbomber Plus Plus. Hellbomber Plus Plus is another guaranteed hit single target brave plus HP attack that is executed twice. In other words, the higher the force gauge percentage that the boss has, the more incoming HP attacks you will expect. When its HP dropped to 39%, you trigger speed raised condition where the boss will raise its speed by 80%. To proceed to the next form, you need to deplete the boss HP to 19%. Once its HP dropped to 19%, the boss will use Suicide Drop. Suicide Drop will result the boss cleanses all debuffs and deal a HP damage that equates to 70% of its target's current HP. The attack will bypass Brave Freeze mechanics, but it can be mitigated with HP damage mitigation like Zack BT or Aerith Gold framed buff from her burst. Do note that the trigger can occur even during your burst or summon phase. It will self-destruct itself and revive itself with its second form, thus proceeding to the next phase of the fight. Please do note that the force gauge does not get reset when the boss transit into its next form. Like the previous form, the boss will gain Shinryu auras as its HP gets depleted. The trigger will be activated immediately after your first action when the boss enters this form. Once the boss HP dropped to 89%, it will activate its speed raised aura, which raises its speed by 80%. When the HP is further depleted to 79% HP threshold, the auras will be increased. While in this form, the boss will use Lunaattack. Lunaattack is a single target brave attack and grants the boss 4 framed buffs that raises attack, speed, brave damage, and defense by 50% for 5 turns. When the boss force gauge is between 20% to 69%, the boss will follow up Lunaattack with Lunaattack Plus. Lunaattack Plus is a guaranteed hit single target brave plus HP attack. When the boss force gauge is 70% and above, the boss will follow up Lunaattack with Lunaattack Plus and Lunaattack Plus Plus. Lunaattack Plus Plus is another guaranteed hit single target brave plus HP attack that is executed twice. Do note that also when boss HP drop to 59% and 49%, it will use Lunaattack with its follow-up depending on the current force gauge status. The trigger does not trigger while in your burst or summon phase, but the trigger will get delayed once you exit the phase. If you have passed through 2 thresholds while in your summon phase, brace yourself for back-to-back triggers. This can be very dangerous if you don't have any damage mitigation. Based on what I have gone through earlier, you might be thinking why this fight is considered one of the toughest Shinryu fights. It is due to the introduction of a HP gate mechanic. The HP gate mechanic will nerf your HP damage unless you do the required action to nullify the mechanic. The boss will activate the mechanic upon using its Hell Press at the 69% and 39% HP threshold. Upon triggering it, the boss will reduce your party brave to 0, followed by an HP attack that deals 50% of your party members' current HP. Like other thresholds attack, the attack can be mitigated. Please be mindful that the threshold attack can be triggered while you are in the summon phase or burst phase. Upon using the attack, the boss will grant a framed buff called Durability, which will reduce all brave damage received by 100% and HP damage by 999%. In other words, you cannot damage the boss unless you dispel the buff. It is advisable not go through your burst phase unless you have means to dispel the boss buff. If you trigger the mechanic at the 69% on the first turn of your burst phase, The remaining burst phase will be dealing 0 HP damage to the boss unless you have means to dispel that buff. FR Echo is also important here since they can help your party to push through the HP threshold easier. On the screen, you can see the list of dispel utility you can consider. For dispelling LDCA, you can consider bringing Seymour LDCA, Beatrix LDCA, Ferris Base Call, Vanille Base Call, Cloud Call, if you have his World of Illusion 15 CP passive, Bald Here Calls, Pain LD, Reno LD, Angelica LD. Alternatively, you can make use of Vanille Sphere for units with E-Sphere slot like Arthen, Vayne, or Dorgan. Seymour BT Aura allows the party to dispel buff when you attack the enemy. Alternatively, you can also use FR Echo units who has dispel utility in their kit like Reigns with his EX and Sarah with her wound. Most JP players also use Diablo's summon for this purpose. You can also avoid the buff by using buff negation utility. Aerith Seal Evil debuff can prevent the boss from buffing themselves. Although they don't have their FR or FR Echo, they can also be considered for this utility with their BT Aura, Ash and Vincent. At the 19% HP threshold, the boss will use Suicide Drop Plus, which has the same properties as Suicide Drop in its previous form except it does not cleanse the debuffs. Do note that the threshold trigger will occur even during your burst phase or summon phase. While outside the HP thresholds, the boss will use its attack as part of its regular moveset when it is targeting at all characters. Before I end the guide, let's cover a bit on the two featured FR units. Let's start off with one of the members of Soldier, Zack. With fully geared, Zack can solo the Toxic Dimension and Transcendence Tier 13. He does get a slight rework with his basic attack will trigger chain slash follow-up that gives Zack melee and ranged weapon resist. Other than that, Zack's base kit remains untouched. Upon using his FR, Zack will apply 4 turn lock debuff on all targets and grants the party his Brave Barrier buff, which is 1.5 times of his initial Brave. Now let us briefly go through the force condition of his FR. 1. When absorb or reduce Brave damage taken will result 20% HP damage bonus added to your force time. Zack grants Brave Barrier to the party and he can reliably refresh the buff with his EX. With his overhead buff active, he also offers party-wide Brave and HP resistance. 2. Recovering HP upon taking a turn will gain you 40% HP damage bonus. This can be easily achieved with HP regen buff. Zack's overhead buff offers 10% HP regen for the party. You can abuse this condition with supercharging. Using a non-attacking instant turn ability will charge up the gauge by 90%. 3. Attacking an enemy with targeting himself will uptick the HP damage condition by 40%. This condition only applies for Zack himself. Zack can constantly reapply lock with his skills so that he will always be targeted by the bosses. When taking his turn, Zack can get 80% HP damage bonus per turn. However, the percentage drop drastically to 40% when an ally takes a turn. Thus, this FR makes Zack more suitable for solo missions. As he has decent damage mitigation, he can solo some of the game's toughest stage like the Dimensions and Transcendence Tier 13. In my opinion, Zack FR is best used for his own burst phase. Otherwise, it is best to use his FR as an echo for another unit FR phase. Now let's cover on the other unit on the banner, Aerith. Aerith is one of the most hyped units in the current era. Her FR boards upgrade her FR slightly and her BT Aura makes her one of the game's best defensive supports for the game. She offers key utility like healing and force gauge charging. When her Seal Evil debuff applied, she protects the party from debuffs and negate the boss from gaining buff. In any event of mishap, she can also revive dead allies. Upon using her FR, which is an instant turn non-attacking ability, Aerith will heal the party by 80% of their own max HP, grants Brave that equates 400% of her own attack. It also grants the party 40% HP regen during the force time. Firstly, let's recap on her FR conditions. 1. Using a changed or modified Brave or HP command will uptick the force time with 40% HP damage bonus on turn. Standard normal HP plus will work for this condition. The downside is that not a lot of units have strong modified HP attacks that could meet her other conditions, which I cover later. Recommend units to abuse her FR condition are herself, Yuna, Charlotta, Ursula and Rome. 2. Recovering allies Brave will give another 20% HP damage for allies and 40% for Aerith. Any allies that battery other members while they act will benefit from this. This condition is not suitable for non-Brave gains fights. So, you might be thinking why a unit with such underwhelming FR conditions is so overhyped. In general, when using a non-attacking instant turn FR Echo will give you 80% HP damage bonus on top of conditions that default FR ability conditions. This allows you to supercharge your force gauge before you unleash that super burst phase. Before I cover on her burst, most people will be wondering whether Aerith viable without her burst? It depends on what you intend to use Aerith for. If you are using Aerith for her utility, burst healing, debuff evasion, buff negation and force charging, she is still valuable FR support unit. If you get her burst green, this is the key factor that differentiates Aerith from other supports. Currently in GL, Aerith is the second FR Echo support with supercharging. The other one being Charlotta. For me, any FRBT support units with force charging always offer great value for your resource investment. Her BT aura will result her activating 3 key mechanics. Let us cover them in detail. The first one is the White Materia's Brilliance, which will activate her overhead buff. The overhead buff will gain stacks as your party take an action, similar to how Garnet's overhead buff works. The value stored in the overhead buff will depend on the HP that your party has healed. The value is capped at 200k. When the stacks is at 3, you will trigger an additional HP attack based on stored healing value. The damage is scalable with force time. The second one is her 4-turn gold-framed buff. The buff Prayer to Save the Planet will grant the party HP damage resist by 100% and Brave damage resistance by 100%. Gold-framed buff cannot be dispelled. Likewise, you also cannot extend the buff with buff extension utility. The third one is no duration BT aura until you trigger dispel the condition. The BT aura will raise the party Brave damage and its cap plus 30%, HP damage up plus 20%, max Brave cap plus 20%, max HP overflow plus 20% and raises the party Brave gains plus 50%. The BT aura will get dispel when any of the party members' HP drop below 50%. Upon triggering it will remove Aerith's overhead buff as well. If any characters got killed by the attack, it will revive any dead party member and heal every member in the party up to 120% of their max HP. If you want to have more understanding on both Zack and Aerith's kit, I highly recommend it to check out the Tonberry Troop website. More details. The updated kit details will be updated on the website when the official infographics are released. With this, I have come to the end of my boss guide presentation. Hopefully you find it useful. If you like the video, please give a like. Please subscribe to my channel for future gaming content. Good luck for the fight in the coming days. Bye.